Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Cold Hard Truth Podcast. I'm Jack Smith.
I'm Srikar.
I'm Anish Gupta.
And today we're doing our mock draft, our last one, going 1 through 16 today. 17 through 32 will be in the next episode. And we started off with the Bengals at number 1. It's a clear-cut choice, right? Joe Burrow, does anyone else have anything different?
Yeah, I mean, there aren't many more ways to explain why Joe Burrow should or will be the pick. This one has been predicted since the regular season ended and the Bengals earned the number 1 overall selection. What can be said is that Burrow is a very talented quarterback who is stepping into a situation that's much better than it might seem. You know, the Bengals have A.J. Green and Jonah Williams returning from injury. They already have Joe Mixon and Tyler Boyd. And if you think back to free agency, they've spent money on defense to bolster that side of the ball. Burrow wanted to go to a team committed to winning Super Bowls, and I feel like the Bengals have shown a commitment to building a winner around him in the 2020 offseason. So in a time of great uncertainty, Burrow to the Bengals, it's a done deal.
Yeah, I think Burrow is a pretty stead-fire pick here. I think he's going to bring kind of this whole new era to the Bengals, right? Like moving on from Andy Dalton. I think the real question is just where's Dalton going to go? Is he going to still stay? Is he going to go to a new team? Kind of that regard, is he going to mentor Burrow? I still have my questions on him because like we've seen with Dwayne Haskins, only 1 year of college is not truly enough. Like he's still learning and it's going to be his second year in the NFL. He still has to learn kind of the football mindset and what to do, especially in the pro level. So I do have my questions, but out of all the quarterbacks, he did do the best in college in that 1 year. I think that was a pretty, impactful season on a lot of scouts. So I think Burrow to the Bengals is a surefire pick here. And like you said, Srikar, I think he's going into a team that's a lot more underrated than people think. And especially with the free agency that we talked about earlier, they made some pretty good moves. DJ Reader, I believe, and others really helped this team kind of go in the right direction. And I wouldn't be surprised if they have some big wins this year. And I think I got one question for you guys, though. Is there any way that the Bengals would trade out?
If the Dolphins want to move up for Tua, that's maybe the only way. But I feel like the Bengals, they've built around Burrow, as I've said before. So I just feel like it's such a done deal. I mean, it would take much.
Dolphins trading up for Tua or for Burrow?
Or sorry, for Burrow. That's what I meant.
For Burrow. Okay.
But like, as I said, like they've built around him. So if you don't, it would just take so much to trade down from that spot, especially with everything going around about Burrow. So I feel like there's a chance, very slim, very, very slim, but there is a chance.
Yeah. Earlier, I would have said there's absolutely no chance. But now that we're getting reports that Tua has failed some medical exams, that kind of, I would think maybe scare some teams away from Tua and realize that they want to trade up to get Burrow. But like Srikar said, you'd have to give up. I mean, if you're the Dolphins, you may have to give up. You're going to have to give up 2, maybe 3 of your first-round picks in either this year or in the future. So I just think it would take too much that teams would rather just wait and draft maybe Herbert than trade up to get Burrow because I think Burrow's great, but I don't know how large the gap is between him and Tua and Herbert. So I just don't think anyone's going to trade up to number 1, and I don't think the Bengals will want to take anyone else other than Joe Burrow in this draft. And we'll move on to number 2 to, I think the best player in this class is Chase Young for me. I mean, I think that other players like Isaiah Simmons can compete. We'll get to him later for the number 1 player in this class, in my opinion. But the Redskins just can't pass up on Chase Young. I think that Ron Rivera wants to have a defensive-minded team. They already do have a pretty good defensive line with all the first-round picks. They've invested on it. But Chase Young would turn this defense near elite, in my opinion.
Yeah, I feel like the Washington Redskins should entertain offers and ideas at number 2 overall before making the pick. But unless a team is willing to give up multiple first-rounders in order to get Tua Tagovailoa, I think the Redskins should just sit tight and make the best player in the 2020 class, in my opinion, their newest member. I feel like Chase Young, he is a special pass rusher. He has tools like Myles Garrett or Khalil Mack. He's fast, he's slippery, he's tough coming off the edge. He has a full toolbox full of moves. No, he's not Nick Bosa against the run. That's been his comparison for the longest time. But I feel like his quickness and his all-around athleticism are actually better than Bosa. But he isn't a true need pick for Washington, which is why trading down might be intriguing. But Young is the best player, and he's going to give Ron Rivera a chance to start his tenure in DC with a dynamic front seven on defense.
Yeah, so as a Buckeyes fan, I've seen Chase Young in a lot of games, and in fact, like the big games that I've seen on like primetime and stuff, he actually doesn't get as many sacks. So he racked up 16 and a half, but there were, I believe, against Penn State, Michigan, and Wisconsin. There were these times where I was watching it where he didn't have those sacks for a long period of time, but it was just his pressure, his constant pressure on the quarterback, forcing him to go to the blind side or the opposite side, or just roll to the right, try and force him to either go out of bounds or just throw it away. And I've seen it so many times where he's just able to get to the quarterback, whether it doesn't even have to be a sack, but like, I mean, I think it's, especially with all these scouts, especially being analytical, I think they know it's more than just the sack numbers, which he obviously had. So Chase Young has been a really rock solid piece for this Buckeyes defense. And I think I was reading some reports. I think Rivera is dead set on taking Chase Young. I think they should. There were some reports by CBS saying that they might go quarterback. They definitely should not. I think in the NFL, teams do make the mistake of giving up on quarterbacks too soon. Obviously, the Browns are one of the teams that constantly does it, but I think like a lot of teams do it where they just give up on a quarterback after 1 year. We've seen it with Josh Rosen. Like he hasn't even gotten a chance yet, in my opinion. But I think the Redskins should stick with Dwayne Haskins, like Ron Rivera is likely doing. And I think, yeah, draft Chase Young. He's going to be a great piece opposite Ryan Kerrigan. And I mean, this Redskins defense has always been great. Like 2 years ago, again, I think I mentioned it before, they were 6-3. The defense was top 5 statistically. So, I mean, they still have most of their pieces. And I mean, I don't think defense is a side of the ball that they need to worry about as much going into this year.
Yeah, so one thing I've thought about previously is what team could be next year's 49ers. And the Redskins are a team that I constantly land on as a team that could shock a lot of the teams next year. I mean, you look at it, it's almost picture perfect. They're picking at number 2. They're taking the best edge rusher in the draft to shore up a defensive line that, in my opinion, if they get Chase Young, will be the best in the league. You have Matt Ioannidis, Daron Payne, Jonathan Allen, and then you have Kerrigan and Young off the edge. Running back by committee with a lot of good backs. I just think that Washington could surprise a lot of teams next year, and they look eerily similar to last year's 49ers. What do you guys think about that?
Oh, no, I agree. It's going to take a lot to turn around, but I actually believe in Ron Rivera. I believe in his whole approach to this Redskins team. I think he's done a great job so far. Getting Chase Young, obviously, that would be so huge for the front seven. As I said before, make them really dynamic. So, yeah, I see why they're being compared to the 49ers, but we just got to wait and see.
I think that's a very, very bold statement. Rarely do teams, jump from 3-13 to, 13-3 or like, however bad. I think the Niners went 4-12 and went to 13-3. It's very rare, but I see what you're saying. Obviously, I mean, Kendall Fuller is not Richard Sherman's level if you want to go player by player comparison and stuff like that. But I think, yeah, overall, they're definitely heading in the right direction. And it really just depends on Dwayne Haskins' development. And I think, I mean, there was actually a report that said Kyle Allen was likely to be the week 1 starter. I actually think that's not a bad idea. I think you go in with Kyle Allen, and if he doesn't do well, obviously, then you put in Dwayne Haskins. He gets time to kind of learn under Allen, learn under Rivera, kind of get his feet wet a little bit. And I think the Redskins, I mean, I can see their ceiling actually being winning the division. I think because the NFC, I mean, it's called the NFC leash for like it's always open. Like someone's always winning it, and it's a different team each year. And obviously, your team people are concerned with the Cowboys and the Eagles. Giants are kind of just in the middle of nowhere. I don't know where they're going, but the Redskins, they can upset some teams, and I think if they just have some more home fans, then maybe they can do a bit more. But we'll see. I think when we look at it compared to the Niners, I think that's a pretty big comparison, pretty vague in terms of that. But I think winning the division is not completely out of the question, even though it would be really hard to do a 1 year.
Yeah, it really all depends on Haskins.
Yeah. A quick note also, you mentioned Kyle Allen. We got to keep in mind that Kyle Allen has worked with Ron Rivera before, so that could actually work out. Just want to say that.
Exactly. Yeah. And not only that, quick note off that, Rivera left, I believe, week 8. And at the time, the Panthers were 5-3. So, I mean, Allen, I believe, was 5-1 as a starter with Ron Rivera. Yeah. So that's something to keep note of as well.
And now we get to pick 3, which is where I believe the draft actually starts. And we're going no trade, so the Lions can't trade down here. Most people have Okudah. I have them taking Isaiah Simmons. I mean, what do you guys have before we get into this?
Yeah, I have Okudah. I mean, 3 picks and 3 players who played at Ohio State. Not a bad start for the Buckeyes, Anish. I mean, Jeff Okudah, he is a true shutdown prospect at cornerback. He has the size, speed, the toughness, the ball skills to be an elite NFL starter. I feel like he fits the profile of a number one cornerback, and he should be one of the best young corners in the league. I mean, he's that talented. And the Lions have other needs, but cornerback is a huge need in a New England-style defense. Think of how Darrelle Revis, Malcolm Butler, Stephon Gilmore, how they were used. That's who Okudah can be in this defense.
Man, I'm really torn. Like I was telling you guys this earlier, it's a really, really tough pick here. Like if they don't trade down, obviously. I think this really changes the whole projection of the draft. I think number 3. Like I think we can all agree there because I kind of did 2 scenarios. I said if Okudah goes, which is what I think will happen because I don't trust the Lions front office. So I think Simmons is actually the better pick here. But I think they're going to go Okudah just because of the reasons you said, Srikar, just because Matt Patricia does want that type of guy that can be that shutdown island corner, which he is. I mean, again, I've watched a lot of his film. I've seen him in a lot of big games, and especially that down the stretch when they had to play 2 top 10 teams on the road, Okudah stepped up in a big way. And even in the semifinal, he had a huge sequence of plays against T. Higgins. And I mean, obviously they didn't get the win, but he was there. Like he was present. You always know where he is on the field. And I think just to keep him in that Lions secondary, I think he's a really, really good replacement for Darius Slay. Obviously he has a lot more upside. Like I said, though, I mean, we'll get to Isaiah Simmons in a minute, but like he's just such a hybrid, and like Patricia would love to have that guy that can be, linebacker, safety, even on the defensive line. Like he can do everything. So I think it really does shake up a lot of where the tackles go and where this whole draft heads. But I'm going to go with Okudah here just because this is kind of our projections of what we think will happen, not what we think should happen. So I think Okudah will get picked by the Lions. And, I mean, it's not a bad pick. Like these 2 players, Okudah and Simmons, are great players. But in my opinion, I think Okudah is less risk just because he's a bona fide corner. Simmons, it's like, yeah, you can put him at different positions, but it's tough. Like we've seen this with players like Deion Buchanan and even Jeff Heath to some extent. But like for Buchanan, going back to him, he just hasn't solidified himself as a solid linebacker / safety, right? Even Mark Barron. So we've seen these kind of hybrids. They haven't really panned out. Obviously, I'm not comparing them to Simmons' upside, but I think Okudah is just the safer pick here, and I just think that's what the Lions will do.
So here's my thing with Simmons. I believe that we've kind of talked about this before. I think Matt Patricia, if he doesn't win this year, is out in Detroit. I think we can all agree on that.
Yeah.
And so I think that at pick 3, he'll want the player that'll make the quicker impact. And my problem with taking a corner this early in a draft is I think that they take way longer to develop than linebacker. And for what Patricia needs is he needs to win this year. I think that Simmons will just help him more quickly than Okudah will. I think that Okudah has a chance to be one of the best corners in this league. But the problem is I think every corner takes a couple of years to develop because we haven't seen a tremendous rookie season from a corner really in a while.
Ramsey.
Yeah, I mean, that's what, 4 years?
I agree, but I think Okudah. I would actually think Okudah is more pro ready than Simmons, just because again in the NFL you have bona fide positions, right? And whereas in college a lot of players play 2 or possibly 3. Like we've seen a lot of these hybrids in college football. I just think Okudah is more pro ready in the sense that he is that island corner. We've seen that type of cornerback thrive in the NFL with Stephon Gilmore, Darrelle Revis, like you said, Richard Sherman. I mean, these guys thrive on that kind of system. So I think Okudah is slightly more pro ready. Again, no knock on Simmons. He's an amazing talent. So in my opinion, though, I would just think Okudah is more pro ready in that sense. But I see what you're saying in terms of like Patricia wanting to win now. But like even he's got to know, like I don't think Simmons is going to make that big of an impact.
I mean,
and it's not only Patricia. It's not only Patricia, but I feel like their GM could also be on the outs if they don't live up to their expectations this year. So we got to keep that in mind because ultimately it's going to be Patricia and Quinn making this pick. So yeah, I mean, I can see where you want to go with Simmons with the quicker impact, but I feel like overall, I mean, it depends. It's because I'm going off of their scheme and who would be the better fit in that certain style of defense. So
yeah, I mean, we see all these corners in college that are locked down, and I mean, we can't deny that Okudah could turn into a Jalen Ramsey or even better than that. But I just don't know how many corners you see go into the NFL and be a lockdown island corner year one. And I think that Patricia will be able to use Simmons. We know he likes versatile players. We saw it in New England. I just think that he'd be such a perfect fit for the Lions. And I think that he has the upside to be the best player in this draft easy. I think Chase Young is personally like the best player in this class, but I think Simmons has the upside to be a perennial All-Pro and Hall of Famer type linebacker, like one of the best in the league. Okay. So I just think that he will be able to make a bigger impact year one, and I think his upside is what Patricia will look at, and he'll want to save his job, and I just think that Simmons will bring that quicker than Okudah will.
Okay. So let's move on to the Giants, because I feel like that's where I had Simmons going. Because, this isn't a need pick for Dave Gettleman, but will he be able to resist, the most rare athlete the linebacker position has seen since ever? He's nothing – he isn't like anything we've ever seen before. Like, he's 6'4", 238 pounds. He ran the 40-yard dash faster than most wide receivers at 4.39 seconds. And Clemson utilized Simmons at virtually every position on defense, often lining him up at safety, linebacker, nickel linebacker, edge rusher, and even in man coverage at cornerback against LSU. But you said he isn't a conventional football player you assign a position to, but rather he's a positionless weapon that defensive coordinators can deploy based on the matchup. And Simmons is an eraser. And for that, he's worthy of a top 5 selection. I just don't think he's going to be top 3 if the Lions are there.
Simmons is, again, we just spent a few minutes talking about him, so I'm not going to go into detail what Srikar mentioned. But yeah, like for example, I go back to the college football semifinal against with Ohio State and Clemson. He essentially he was disrupting fields the entire second half, and he in different ways too, whether it was in coverage or pass rushing. I think his hybrid. Gettleman is a type of guy that's he's on constant edge. Everyone's always questioning his moves. What is he going to do with this pick? What is he going to do with this? Obviously, last year, the whole thing with Daniel Jones caused a lot of ruckus. And I don't even know where his head's at. But, if he's available, in Srikar in my mock drafts, if he's available at 4, how can you pass on him, right? Mm-hmm. I think it really just depends. Obviously, I think, Jack, I know where you're going with this if Simmons goes 3, but I think it really just becomes either a tackle or linebacker position need here, because both of them are decent needs for this team. And but I think Simmons it just fills a void that the Giants have needed for a long time. And trust me, these New York fans are hungry, right? They are hungry for a good team. They are hungry to get back to the playoffs, and they need that flashy player that can, kind of revamp this defense.
See, I'm just scared that Gettleman is going to overthink it, because last year, of course, we saw the whole thing with Daniel Jones. Josh Allen was there. Everyone wanted Josh Allen to be a Giant, but they took Daniel Jones. And see, with Simmons on the board, you're saying okay, how can we pass him up? But we said the same thing about Josh Allen last year. So it's I don't know where, as you said, I don't know where
their upsides are different. Their upsides are different.
Yeah,
agreed.
I agree.
Since I have Simmons gone, I think that the Giants are pretty upset about that, but I think they shift their focus to tackle. And you see what Gettleman wants in the trenches. He wants huge men who can move mountains, just big bodies in the trenches. And so I think he goes Mekhi Becton at left tackle to protect Daniel Jones, because I think that's the type of player he wants down on his line. He's got a ton of just massive guys on the line, and that's what Becton is. He's just huge for a tackle. And I think that what he showed in the combine really impressed Gettleman, and I think that's what he'll want at pick number 4.
Yep.
And I think a lot of these tackles, it's hard to go wrong with them, because they can go Wills here, they can go Wirfs, but I think they'll go Becton to shore up that. I think he's the most solid left tackle in this draft, because a lot of the other guys play right, and you think they could play left, but Becton, I think they're sure he can play left tackle, so they'll go him at 4 since Simmons is gone. And then we'll quick transition into the Dolphins. Do we have anyone picking anyone other than Tua Tagovailoa here?
Quick question though, where would Nate Solder play if Becton goes?
I think that maybe they start Becton at right, and then they move Solder to right at some point, or they just move on from him. Or to be completely honest, they can try and move him in a trade, because I don't think they're really married to Solder. His contract is
pretty hefty.
That is true, but a lot of teams need tackle. Yeah. And I just don't think they're married to him. So that's why I think they're going to go Becton.
Yeah, that's a fair assumption.
Mm-hmm. But talking about the Dolphins, did anyone take anyone other than Tua Tagovailoa here?
Yeah, it might take a trade up on draft night, but all signs indicate the Miami Dolphins will select a quarterback with their first pick in the 2020 draft. What's not predictable right now is who that quarterback will be. The smart pick, according to the draft board, would be to select Tua Tagovailoa. He's smart, mobile, tough, accurate, and he's a big-time winner in the SEC, but he's also suffered 2 major ankle injuries and the dislocated hip. And in a draft season that doesn't feature pro days or private workouts, I mean, will the Dolphins be scared off by an injury they can't evaluate in person? I know of multiple teams that believe that could be the case, which that's going to open the door to Justin Herbert. So for now, the prediction is still Tua based on how superior he is to Herbert as a quarterback, but it's worth mentioning there is belief around the league that this selection could surprise fans.
Yeah, I've said it before, but I am not high on Tua Tagovailoa. I doubt him a lot more than other people do, but I just think there's no way the Dolphins don't take him here. I prefer Herbert, to be completely honest, as a quarterback to Tua, because I think that Alabama as a system really just helps his quarterbacks, and we haven't seen one become a great NFL talent in a while. And I think he has the more weapons than anyone in this draft. So I'm not a huge fan of him, but I think he will go number 5 to the Dolphins.
Tua's an interesting kind of look, like when we look at it, because obviously he came back and won that national championship, right? And then he kind of followed it up the year after before losing to Clemson. And then we saw kind of him taking a big linear progression in 2019 before obviously that huge hip injury. And there are a lot of questions, but I think the Dolphins are kind of getting this kind of media buzz into their heads, like this whole tank for Tua notion, right? Obviously they didn't tank. They went 5-4 down the stretch. So they didn't really aim to fall in this position. They didn't know that Burrow was just going to skyrocket into, one of the like arguably the best college football season ever by a quarterback. So I think when we look at Tua, Jack, you make some really good points. I think Alabama quarterbacks just haven't produced that well in the NFL. Obviously, A.J. McCarron for one, that comes to mind of just someone that didn't really live up to the hype. But then again, Tua does have kind of that flash to him. He's mobile yet very accurate at the same time. Obviously, that mobility is a big question, but also I think he'll bring this kind of new notion to the Dolphins that like says, "Hey, we're here. Like we're starting to kind of develop into a really good team." And again, I personally think they already are. I personally think it's not. People shouldn't be seeing this team as like, oh, they're 5 years away. I honestly think they're less than 2. Like I think obviously that 5-4 stretch for me was really, really convincing. And I think like I said, I think they should stick with Fitzpatrick as their week 1 starter. And I think they should redshirt Tua for the rest. I think Tua is the best quarterback to redshirt out of all the quarterback prospects. And I think Herbert and Burrow are more pro ready. But if you can redshirt Tua and just have Fitzpatrick kind of ride this the Dolphins for about a year, let Tua kind of get healthier. Obviously, you're going to get a better kind of medical staff at the NFL level. So I think Brian Flores is a great players coach again, right? So I think, Tua here is just the selection that the Dolphins are kind of going to make, in my opinion, barring any, drastic changes. And in my opinion, it's not as bad of a selection. And though my questions for Tua are also concerning, like they are with Burrow, I think he can still develop into one of the great quarterbacks in this game.
Srikar, do you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree. I had Tua going at 5. But I'm really the only thing I'm worried about is that people or like teams can't really evaluate Tua in person, and they're not going to see how that injury is holding up. And of course, he failed the 2 physicals. So we just got to see. But I feel like the pick here has definitely got to be Tua.
Okay. And then we move on to number 6 with the Chargers. I have him going Justin Herbert, my number 2 quarterback in this class. I just think that they need a quarterback. I don't think Tyrod Taylor's the future, and I don't like waiting to get your quarterback of the future, because I think this is a team that's built to win now. I mean, I had them going to the Super Bowl this year. That didn't exactly work out, but we saw it a couple of years ago. This team is built to win at the moment. They have one of the best defenses in the league, and they have underrated weapons on the offensive side of the ball. I need a quarterback if I'm them, so I'm going to go Herbert right here. I think he fits well in their offense. So I just don't think they can pass him up for a quarterback next year.
Yeah, the Los Angeles Chargers, by all accounts from league insiders, will draft whichever quarterback the Dolphins pass on. They're ready to build around either Tua Tagovailoa in a scenario in which he sits 2020 behind Tyrod Taylor, or to let Justin Herbert compete for the starting job as the team moves into a new stadium. And I mean, both quarterbacks have their positives and negatives. Tua's injury is potentially a major concern, both in the short and long term, and there will be questions about Herbert's ability to read a complex defense and work through progressions after not showing that much with the Ducks. But he also has considerable upside. His arm strength, his mobility, I think it would pair well with that loaded Chargers skill position group. Like you said, Jack, they're built to win now.
Yeah, with Justin Herbert, I also had Justin Herbert going to the Chargers, but there are reports saying that the Chargers are kind of all in on Tyrod Taylor, at least for this year. So don't be surprised if they take, maybe even a tackle, or I don't even know, like just the best player just the best player available. Because there are teams that do that sometimes, right? They just go for best player available rather than team need, and we've seen that plenty of times. But Herbert is actually my favorite quarterback prospect. I'm not going to rank him number one. He's just my favorite in general, because I think his size, his arm strength are just two things that for a quarterback are a necessity in this game. It's becoming a necessity in today's league, and he has both of those. I think my problem is he did play in kind of a weaker conference than these like Tua and Burrow. Obviously, the Pac-12 is not as strong as the SEC in terms of defenses, but I mean, from what I saw in the Pac-12 championship game against, I believe it was Utah, he showed a lot of promises, and as well in the Senior Bowl. So I think Herbert is again. I think he can easily become one of the top 10 quarterbacks in this game. And I think you're going into one of the best rosters I think this league has. I think it all depends on what like Anthony Lynn can do in terms of the Chargers projection. Because I have some questions for him. Like that 12-4 year, I think Anthony Lynn had, like, I don't know if he won Coach of the Year, but he had a good case for it. I think Matt Nagy won it, but I think he's shown some promise as a coach, but now it's got, like, this year was pretty disappointing. Like, now you gotta win these close games. And I think I mean, obviously we haven't seen Herbert yet in these clutch scenarios, but I think he can do really well in the NFL. And I think the Chargers can't really, I mean, this is kind of a team need, right? So it really just depends whether they go team need or best player in the draft. Best player available. And I think they're going to go team need here.
Yeah, I think if you are talking about best player available, if they decide not to go Herbert, I can see him going tackle, or if Simmons falls to them, that would be a perfect pick in my opinion, because they've lacked a superstar linebacker for a while, and I think that would just make that defense. I would go best in the league. I would straight up say it if they got Simmons with a pretty good D line, but look at their secondary too now, especially after getting Chris Harris.
Again, rosters are one thing. It's the collection that matters.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So let's move on to the Panthers at number 7. Since I didn't have Jeff Okudah going at number 3 to the Lions, I have him going here to the Panthers, immediately filling in and upgrading from James Bradberry, who signed a huge contract this offseason.
Yeah, I had them taking Derrick Brown, and I mean, drafting a nose tackle at number 7 overall, it's not the sexiest move in an NFL landscape that sees everyone else prioritizing speed on the edges, but I mean, Derrick Brown, he is a legitimate game changer on the interior. He is a massive human being at 6'5", 326 pounds. But he's also an athlete who, once unlocked from his scheme, he has the tools to be a penetrator and reset the line of scrimmage with his upfield push and power. And the Panthers do have a need on the interior, and I feel like Brown would give them the foundation to build a defense around while freeing up Brian Burns to use his speed on the edge. So with Teddy Bridgewater and PJ Walker signed at quarterback, I feel like the Panthers are all in on building the defense in the 2020 draft.
Yeah, I also had Derrick Brown going at number 7. But again, in my kind of second scenario, if Simmons went number 3, I would have had Okudah going 7 as well. So just letting you know, Jack, I kind of agree on that, because I think Okudah would have been a great replacement for James Bradberry in the sense that, again, he's his own island. And with Carolina, I think, I still have some hope for them in terms of, because again, they just re-signed Christian McCaffrey. They still have a little piece to build around. And I think for college players, I'm all about how you do in big games. And in the Iron Bowl against Alabama, Derrick Brown had one of the best games I think he's ever played. And that allowed Auburn to upset Alabama to win that game. I believe it was in the final minute. He caused this quarterback pressure on Tua, or I forget, I don't know if Tua was playing, but I know he was a huge impact for Auburn to come back and win. So I really like this pick here for Carolina just because it's not, again, like you said, it's not the sexiest pick, but then again, Derrick Brown brings kind of this whole going back to, hey, we're a defensive minded team. Like that's what the Panthers have always been. And I think if they can get Derrick Brown here, it's just going to add to this defense that is trying to rebuild after the tragic loss of Luke Kuechly and Thomas Davis, right? The list goes on, but they're getting younger, right? Brian Burns, Shaq Thompson, right? Now you get Derrick Brown. I think the sky's the limit for this team on defense. And obviously we have to see what they can do on offense, but I kind of like where this team is kind of heading. Again, I'm not a big fan of Teddy Bridgewater, but we'll see. I think Derrick Brown is the right pick here.
Yeah, I can agree with you on that one. If Jeff Okudah isn't there, I can easily see the Panthers going Derrick Brown to become a stalwart on that defensive line for years to come. The problem is I just don't think you can pass up Okudah based off where I have other players going.
No, I agree.
Panthers.
Yeah.
And now moving on to the Cardinals, I have them selecting Jedrick Wills with the 8th pick, right tackle out of Alabama, just because I think that he's a better fit than Tristan Wirfs for them because they're going to want to throw the ball. I think Wirfs is a little bit more of a run blocker. He can pass block, that is true, but I think that Wills is more of a defined pass protector, and he'll be able to allow Kyler Murray to roll out to his right, I think, a little bit better than Wirfs will. So I have them going Jedrick Wills from Alabama. What do you guys think?
I have him going with Tristan Wirfs. I think after adding DeAndre Hopkins in that blockbuster trade, the Arizona Cardinals can use the number 8 overall pick to address deficiencies on the offensive line. I feel like Tristan Wirfs, he's just a plug-and-play starter at 4 spots because he dominated in college. He put on an outstanding show at the Combine. He mostly played right tackle for the Hawkeyes, but I feel like he has the athletic profile to line up at left tackle, or he can be an all-pro caliber guard. And I think the Cardinals, even after signing DJ Humphries to an extension, they need major upgrades across the line. So I feel like Wirfs will give that unit a major boost. And I feel like his just his all-around, you can play him anywhere. I feel like that's what's going to prove how beneficial he is.
So yeah, I was going to talk about how the DJ Humphries signing kind of led me to also think that the Cardinals would take Wirfs. I don't know if you guys can answer this for me, but does Humphries play left or right tackle?
He plays left. I think.
He plays left. Okay. So I think Tristan Wirfs just, again, would still be the better pick here because of, again, his versatility. And I think you can put him at right guard, you can put him at right tackle. And I think those 2 positions are key for the Arizona Cardinals because Kyler Murray loves to run to his left as well. And I think like I saw like kind of his tape this year. He just like right when he would snap it, he tended to kind of move to the direction he would throw in. And obviously that's what rookies tend to do, but like he's kind of a mobile one, right? So he's going to do that a bit more even as his career progresses. So I think you need those athletic guards and / offensive linemen in general that can just move laterally quickly. And Wirfs obviously displayed some of the best combine stats that we've ever seen. And I think the Cardinals are all about athleticism, all about young talent, young raw talent that can, kind of plug and play right away. Show their kind of skill set in the sense that, hey, I can keep up with Kyler Murray. I can keep up with this whole kind of moving in the younger direction. Right. Obviously kind of Fitz is going to pass kind of the keys to DeAndre Hopkins. We're seeing Kyler Murray and Cliff Kingsbury in this new Arizona offense, new Arizona culture. And obviously David Johnson's gone. So now it's Kenny and Drake. I mean, they're kind of revamping it, but not necessarily all at once. And I love the way that they're doing it. They didn't go all in 1 year. They didn't change everything. They're kind of progressively doing it, kind of like the Browns did, except they're doing it with players that don't have these big personalities. And I think Wirfs is a guy that obviously coming from Iowa, kind of this grit and grind culture. Obviously playing in the Big Ten, he's faced a lot of very good edge rushers. Very good pass rushers, and I think Wirfs is just the guy to go here over Jedrick Wills.
Yeah, I can see that. I have right now. I have it in between Wills and Wirfs. I'm not sure there's a wrong pick for them here. I just think that Wills, in my opinion, is a better fit for what kind of offense Kingsbury wants to run there. But to be honest, there's no wrong pick there. Let's move on to the Jaguars.
Quick note. I think it just goes to show how this mock draft is what we think will happen versus what we think should happen. So I'm all for Jedrick Wills. I think I think he is the most pro-ready offensive lineman in this draft class.
I agree.
Like we've been talking about it off YouTube, but I think Wills is the most pro-ready. He's shown signs at Alabama, especially in the SEC. So yeah, I think just what the Cardinals are kind of doing and what they're kind of instilling in Arizona, I just think Wirfs fits that better.
Okay. So now let's move on. At number 9, I have the Jaguars taking Derrick Brown. I know you guys had him off the board, but a player of his caliber slipping to number 9 for a Jaguars defense that they recently traded away a lot of talent. And this is they get almost an immediate Calais Campbell replacement. I would also like to see Javon Kinlaw here. Like they have a choice if they want to take the nose tackle who can also get pressure or the more athletic defensive tackle. I think they will and should go Brown here, but I wouldn't be surprised to see them want to take Kinlaw.
Yeah, and since I have Derrick Brown off the board, I'm going to go Kinlaw. I mean, predicting the direction of Jacksonville is impossible after the team traded Calais Campbell and Jalen Ramsey, AJ Bouye. But I feel like one major area of need is on the defensive line, where Yannick Ngakoue could be traded after receiving the franchise tag, and Josh Allen looks like a franchise player. Javon Kinlaw's story is amazing, as he went from being pretty much homeless to a star for the Gamecocks. He's also a dominant player with the athleticism, power, the body type to be a starter as a 3-4 end or a 4-3 tackle. And I mean, with Campbell gone and the Jaguars once again rebuilding, I feel like Kinlaw gives Jacksonville a 3-down impact player on the interior defensive line.
Yeah, with Jacksonville, I was reading a report just a few hours ago that said they are all in on at least Minshew for this year. So I think there are 3 things that I think can happen. One, being the most likely, they take a defensive tackle to replace Calais Campbell. And since I have Derrick Brown off the board, my selection would be Kinlaw because of what he's done for South Carolina, how he plays. I think he's kind of a quick defensive tackle, yet he can stuff the run. But my thing is, so there's 2 other scenarios that I wanted to throw at you guys was, since Okudah's gone, there's been a lot of talk about CJ Henderson being a very, very good corner in this draft class, just because of his cover skills and his kind of hybrid mentality as a cornerback. So would you guys see any chance that the Jags make this whole surprise pick and actually take Henderson in the top 10? And my other question for you guys would be, since they're all in on Minshew, is there any way they would take one of the tackles, because the Jags are kind of weak on the offensive line due to injuries and such? So is there, out of those 2 scenarios, is there any that you see that potentially happen?
I think corner is more likely than tackle, but I mean, like, there's obviously a chance, CJ Henderson, he's from Florida too. So, I mean, like, it's possible, but I'd rather address D-line, especially with Ngakoue. I don't know what the situation is with him, and it's kind of uncertain. So, I mean, there's a chance, but I'd rather go D-line.
Personally, for me, CJ Henderson isn't my second cornerback in this class, so I just don't see them taking him inside the top 10. If they really wanted to go for him, though, I would say they would just trade down with a team looking to move up possibly for a tackle, maybe the Bucs, to be completely honest, where my mock draft has gone so far, to try and jump the Browns and Jets to get an offensive lineman. But I just think that they need to address defense after trading away a lot of their talent. And I don't think that CJ Henderson is worth a top 10 pick, especially with the players they have on the board in my mock draft right now.
And I think with losing Campbell, you want to have someone to pair with Josh Allen, and I think Kinlaw's just that guy.
Yeah, I think I think those are great points. I'm just saying this top 10 has kind of been, we've kind of had a lot of similarities in our picks. Just also, if you look on mock drafts online, we can all agree that these top 9 have been thrown a lot in their respective picks. So, but I wouldn't rule it out just because I've seen a lot of reports where scouts have clearly defined CJ Henderson as the second best corner in this class. Obviously, he may not be, but just scouts have had that notion inside of them. And I think the Jags trading down for him would be a great move. I think you brought up a great point there with the Buccaneers. But obviously in our mock draft here, we're not assessing trades. So I think if they were to stay here, I think Kinlaw has a lot of upside as well. And I think he's no question a top 2 defensive tackle in this draft class. So I wouldn't be surprised if they were to take him there. But yeah, just let's not rule out any scenarios, because again, we've seen in past drafts that anything can happen.
Yeah. So like I previously mentioned, I did have the Giants taking a tackle. And we'll get into it later, but the Buccaneers pick was the hardest for me to make. And I know we're not allowing trades, but I would easily see if it panned out like I think it will in this mock draft. I think the Buccaneers would trade up to this Jaguars pick very easily if the Jaguars wanted to move out, because I do not have them actually getting a tackle. We'll get into that later. So I would have them moving up to the Jaguar spot if they really wanted to.
Just a quick point on that before we get to the next team. I just wanted to say, if the Bucks do move up, think about it. The
the Niners are looking for a
Kinlaw
receiver.
Does address,
but I mean,
Kinlaw does address a need for them, and they're reports saying they're growing more and more. They're being more and more fans of Kinlaw.
But then again, they're also more and more fans of Jeudy and Lamb. So we'll get into that in a bit, though.
Yeah. So now we move on to the Browns, and I have them taking Andrew Thomas out of Georgia because I think they need a left tackle. That's why I have them not taking Wirfs, because they just got Conklin. I think he is a defined right tackle, and now they get Andrew Thomas, who previously was the number one tackle in this class, and people I think have forgotten about him a little bit. And he's really the only bona fide, other than Becton, the only bona fide left tackle in this draft class. And I think that's exactly what the Browns need. And it would set them up on the offensive line at their 2 tackle spots, and they'd be able to have a replacement on each of their tackle spots over one offseason. So that was I think that would be a complete win for them.
Yeah, so I had the Browns taking Jedrick Wills. I mean, this is a bit of a slide. I mean, they somehow get lucky enough to find the top offensive tackle still on the board at number 10 overall. And I mean, he may have started at right tackle for the Crimson Tide, but he has the athleticism to easily slide to the left side and protect the blind side of Baker Mayfield. Wills is a finisher with awesome NFL-ready technique and the power to handle whatever type of pass rush is thrown at him. He is a clean projection. He's ready to step right into an NFL offense. Anish mentioned this before, but I definitely think he's the most pro-ready offensive lineman.
Man, I think if I were the Browns, it's really interesting. I think I put they would take Andrew Thomas before I explain, because again, like you said, he was a bona fide left tackle. And I think that's what, I mean, the Browns have always kind of had a solid, I mean, obviously Joe Thomas, they're trying to replace him. I think Thomas was the number one offensive lineman going into kind of this whole combine start of the off season. And I don't know why his stock slipped as much. Like, he hasn't really done anything bad, but obviously other offensive linemen have kind of projected themselves upward, but he hasn't really done anything bad. Obviously he had a kind of up and down year this past season, but his year before that, he was pretty darn good. And I think obviously playing in the SEC, where they've produced tons of good pass rushers, I think he's held up strong against them. And again, the running backs that he's blocked for, think about it, like one, DeAndre Swift, who's coming out this class. We've had Nick Chubb, who again he'll reunite with. We've had Sony Michel, who's a pretty good running back for the New England Patriots. So I think, yeah, his run blocking is pretty stellar. His pass blocking needs kind of some improvement, but I would love to take Andrew Thomas here. In fact, I was coming into this whole draft process, I was scared. I didn't think he would even fall out of the top 7, but now kind of other offensive linemen have projected themselves upwards, so I can see them taking Thomas at 10. Wills would be an interesting pick here because of how he's protected Tua's blind side. And I think that's very important, because if you were to move him to left tackle, he's already used to protecting that important side of the field. And obviously Baker's blind side is the left side, not the right. So obviously there's more differences than just protecting one's blind side. There's different lateral movements between right and left. But I think Wills can easily make that switch. I just think they would go Thomas here because of how he's been a left tackle for a good number of years now. But the thing is, I mean, the Browns have been looking pretty good this free agency. I think they're looking a lot into analytics with Barry and Stefanski. They've done a really good job. I think we can all agree there. I think it's a lot different than what Dorsey and Freddie Kitchens did last year, or even Dorsey's been doing these past few years, just going for star players, plug and play. All these guys that have flashy names to them. They're going for players that are rock solid. They know what they're getting. And I think you know what you're getting with Andrew Thomas, a solid run blocker who has some upside with his pass blocking. And honestly, you can't really go wrong here. I don't think Thomas or Wills, there's that much of a gap. Truth be told, I don't know which one has more upside, but in my opinion, I think they're just going to go Thomas because of, again, the position-based NFL kind of system where you plug and play at one position.
Mm-hmm. So moving on to the Jets pick, this pick was actually really hard to make for me because Wirfs is really the only offensive lineman available on my board, the way my draft played out. And the two receivers are just staring the Jets right in the eye. And they're just so tempting because Jeudy and Lamb are elite talent and will be elite in the NFL, I think. But I think that Joe Douglas, as a GM, will go for Tristan Wirfs here. He's, in my opinion, I think he fits well with the Jets because he will be able to protect Sam Darnold as well as pave holes for Le'Veon Bell. And as a personal USC fan, I watched him absolutely dominate us at Iowa in the bowl game this year. So I just think the Jets will go Tristan Wirfs because they need offensive linemen, and that's just who Joe Douglas is, and that's what he was with Baltimore. So they'll pass up on the receiver of the future to take and solidify that offensive line, and they'll take Tristan Wirfs.
Yeah, I mean, the New York Jets struggled out of the gate when free agency began, and I think they're going to enter the draft with as many needs as they started the offseason with. At number 11, Joe Douglas can use his first choice as general manager on an offensive tackle, wide receiver, cornerback, or pass rusher. The problem is the Jets only have one first-round pick. So I'm going to say Mekhi Becton. And I feel like he has the highest ceiling of any offensive lineman in the 2020 class. But here's the thing. He also comes with the biggest question marks as far as week one readiness. He's 6'7", 364 pounds. He is a massive human being. He has rare movement skills. But, I mean, his technique was a work in progress when he left Louisville. The hope is that an offseason spent honing his craft with offensive line coach Duke Manyweather will have him ready to rock and roll. Becton, if he hits, I think that's what the Jets need, protecting Sam Darnold. And now New York must attack the rest of those holes.
So I think with the Jets, I had two scenarios with this whole Isaiah Simmons pick, and I think that would affect teams like the Jets. So in my original draft, mock draft, I had Simmons going fourth, right, to the Giants. So if Simmons were to go fourth, I think the Wills will land right in the Jets' lap. And I think, like Jack said, Jack loves Jedrick Wills. And how can you not? Again, we've talked about how he's pro ready, and filling in at right tackle, I think, would be a great fit for this Jets O-line. Again, I'm not a fan of rebuilding the entire line in a year, but still, I think he's one guy that you can have a lot of faith in. Obviously, on a cheap deal, you don't have to get rid of him. You can have faith in him for a few years, and he can easily develop into a very good right tackle. So I had Wills going there. But the thing is, if Simmons were to go 3, like Jack said, and like I was thinking about, I actually think that I thought that if Simmons were to go 3, then I believe 4 tackles would have been gone in the top 10, the top 4. So Becton, Wirfs, Wills, and Thomas, I believe. Or no, sorry, 3 tackles. Wirfs, Becton, and Wills would have gone. So that leaves Thomas as the lone one out. And I don't think the Jets, if they had a choice between Andrew Thomas and Ceedee Lamb, I don't think they would pass up on Lamb for Andrew Thomas. So in that second scenario I was telling you guys about, I think they go Ceedee Lamb over Andrew Thomas in my kind of second scenario. But my first one was Jedrick Wills, and in my second one where Simmons went 3, I think that they would choose Ceedee Lamb over Andrew Thomas.
Yeah, I could easily see that. Yeah, I could easily see that happening. The only problem is I would honestly, as a Jets fan, rather have Jeudy than Ceedee Lamb because I think just consistency with him and his ability to get open is something we really haven't ever seen.
His route running is incredible.
Yeah, it'd be exactly what the Jets need, as they haven't had a receiver that's been able to always be open no matter what kind of route. He has the best route tree, the best route running that I might have ever seen in a wide receiver prospect. So I think they would take the smarter pick over the maybe flashier, higher upside pick in Ceedee Lamb. But the way that my board panned out, I had to have them go Tristan Wirfs as the last of the big offensive tackles off the board.
Oh, yeah, just quick response before you go, Srikar. Again, my thing is what I think will happen versus what I think should. So I think the Jets are looking at this like, okay, Thomas or Lamb. I think Lamb would have a bigger impact for them than Thomas would. Just right away. And I think the Jets can find a tackle in the second round and like Lamb is just so tempting, right? Like you were mentioning. And I think they're thinking if again, in my scenario, I think they're looking at it as like Thomas is kind of lower on their ranks. And I think they're looking at it as like, okay, if Lamb is there versus Thomas, I think I would go Lamb and wait for a tackle in the second round. I think that's what they would do. I'm not saying that's necessarily the right thing to do. Obviously, you mentioned how Jeudy is a better route runner. I think that's great for the Jets because they had this kind of iffy scenario with Robbie Anderson. I think Perriman's also kind of a rack yak kind of guy, right? Run after the catch. So, I mean, that's what Ceedee Lamb is as well. So there's a lot of questions there. Again, these drafts can go any which way, which is what I love about the NFL draft. So I think that's a great point you mentioned, Jack, about Jeudy versus Lamb. But again, it's what I think will happen versus what I think should.
Yeah, and as I said before, it's going to come down to offensive tackle, receiver, corner, or pass rusher. So I feel like if Becton is still there, I think he's worth the risk, and I think he's worth taking that chance. And I feel like compared to Andrew Thomas, I do like what Anish said about how he's blocked for some really good runners, especially DeAndre Swift. He's in this class. But I feel like Becton has the highest ceiling. And if you can get past his –
okay. So I don't see that, like, the ceiling part, because again, I'm all about level of competition in college, and Becton played in the ACC, which is one of the weaker conferences, versus again Thomas SEC, Will's SEC, Wirfs Big Ten. Like, all of these guys have had insane level of competition, and just I haven't seen that much with Becton. Like, I don't see his ceiling the way you guys do.
I just feel like with his movement skills, and if you can perfect his technique, I think this is exactly what Sam Darnold needs. And I think he'd be a better fit on the Jets than Andrew Thomas. So that's why I'm going with Becton.
Yeah, I see the upside point you're making, just because a man of that size who's able to move, that quickly, and if you can hone it all together, I mean, could go down as one of the best offensive tackles to play, just because he has a mix of talent and size that you just don't see very often. So
it's a high risk, high reward.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of prospects in this draft that are like that. And I just don't think the Jets can go wrong with this pick. If they're going to have tackle or receiver, it's almost guaranteed one of those two positions. They need them both desperately, and there are some elite caliber players at those positions, so they can't go wrong. Let's move on to the Raiders and 49ers. We can do them at the same time, both on the West Coast, both near us. And I think it's pretty obvious that both these teams will be going receiver if there are no trades. Personally, for me, I have the Raiders going Jeudy, and the Ceedee Lamb falls right into the Niners' laps. What do you guys think about these two picks?
I had something way different. So let's start with the Raiders. So when you've had to game plan to stop Tyreek Hill twice a year, I feel like you get an appreciation for what speed can do. And I feel like Henry Ruggs has that kind of speed and game-changing ability. And he's actually better than Hill was coming into the league. And Ruggs does get classified as a speed receiver, and he is with that 4.27 40-yard dash time. But he's also a polished route runner. Let's not forget that. And he's an all-around threat. Get him the football, and beautiful things happen. And maybe you're surprised he's the first receiver off the board, but you shouldn't be. Because here's the thing. NFL teams nowadays, they covet speed over polish. And, of course, the Las Vegas Raiders, they could consider a quarterback here. It seems like John Gruden's always considering one. But I feel like their strategy in free agency points to a receiver at number 12 overall.
Well, I don't think it's just speed. They covet talent over polish, I believe. So talent in general. And, yeah, speed is a big factor, but there's also a wide range of quote-unquote talent.
But see, he's not just speed. That's the point I'm trying to make. That's the misconception. I feel like he's also a polished route runner.
I'm not saying speed is his only thing. Like, he's, again, level of competition, SEC. But also you can point to the fact that he's had one of the best route runners ever by his side, right? And Jerry Jeudy. He's had Tua Tagovailoa, right? One of the best quarterback prospects we've seen.
But I feel like then you can make that same case against Jeudy, that he's had good receivers next to him.
There's a lot of case, like, again, Ruggs, one out of every 4 catches, I think, went for touchdowns in his career, illustrious college career, which is pretty insane. So there's a lot of things you can talk about with these prospects. That's why in the draft we've seen a lot of busts, we've seen a lot of stars. I think that's just the great part of the NFL draft, in the sense that, they can be such a high impact player, or they can be such a low impact player that you question, why did you make that selection? So Ruggs going first out of the 3 is a very, very bold statement, which I disagree with, because I just believe that in my scenario, my first scenario where Wills went to the Jets, I have the Raiders taking Jeudy just because he fits their kind of system a lot better than Lamb does in terms of his route running ability and his number 1 receiver kind of build. Kind of like what they were lacking with when they tried to get Antonio Brown. That's what they were trying to get, right? Like a guy who's quick off the edge with insane routes and some of the best toe tapping ability we've seen in a while. And I think you're getting that here. He's going to be a great compliment to Tyrell Williams. I think Jerry Jeudy is a great pick here at number 12. And I think, there are teams that just Jeudy would fit better with, and there are teams that Lamb would fit better with. For example, the San Francisco 49ers, I believe that Lamb would be a better fit than Jerry Jeudy just because of his run after the catch ability, because Shanahan is all about that. We've seen that. He does a lot of RPO, run pass option. He does a lot of movement on the offensive line of scrimmage before the play begins. We've seen that all these past 2 years. And Lamb is just a perfect guy to fill in there. Him, Deebo Samuel, Kendrick Bourne, these guys can all move quick while at the same time being these possession type receivers that can line up anywhere on the field. And Lamb just adds to that kind of dynamic and you have a strong guy in George Kittle who can also catch. So I think Lamb is a perfect fit there. That's why I have Jeudy going number 12. I have Lamb going number 13. And sorry, just to add on a quick note there. If the Jets were to take Ceedee Lamb, right, I still have Jeudy going 12 to the Raiders. But again, if Lamb is gone, I actually think the Niners would take Kinlaw over Henry Ruggs. If they were presented with that choice, just because Kinlaw is a great complement to the defensive line. He has a great build, just like DeForest Buckner. He is again.
See, but here's the thing: are you saying Kinlaw because Buckner got traded?
Because a bit of both, but I think it's not.
If that's the case, because backing up DeForest Buckner is DJ Jones, and I feel like he has so much
DJ
potential.
Jones is not bad. Oh yeah, he had a great game against Seattle. I believe that Monday night game. So yeah, he has a lot of potential. But my thing is, what carried this team? Like, it wasn't the receivers that carried this team. It was the defensive line. You want to keep it as intact as possible. And Buckner is a huge loss. I think,
and it's still intact. It's still intact. Because here's the thing: Buckner's a huge loss, but they still have an embarrassment of riches up front. Think about it. You still have Armstead. You still have Ford. You still have Bosa. Losing Buckner was huge, but you got to realize that is it worth using a draft pick just to bolster an area that's already strong, or get another receiver and help that offense, help Jimmy Garoppolo?
This is where the whole selection comes in. Best player available versus team need. So I think if they were presented with Ruggs or Kinlaw, I think they go best player available. And I think whereas if they had Lamb or Ruggs in my other scenario, I think they go with the flashy guy here. Because again, Kinlaw it all starts in the interior. DeForest Buckner's pressures allowed players like Nick Bosa to rack up 9 sacks. It allowed D Ford to get this constant pressure off he has. It allowed Eric Armstead to get his 10 sacks, right? Buckner didn't have the best stats out of the defensive line, but his constant pressure allowed the edge rushers to kind of come in and complete this defensive line as a whole. And if you lose that, I'm telling you, that's going to be a big loss. And obviously the defensive line is still pretty good, right? It's still better than the 99% of teams, but you got to think about, like, again, it's not talent. In the NFL, talent doesn't get you everywhere. It doesn't get you that far. It's how the team can build around as a whole. And that's a big void that DeForest Buckner left on this defensive line. And I think Kinlaw would be a great fit to keep it kind of intact while you stay young, right? You stay athletic, you stay quick. And I think the defensive line would still flourish. But again, not to diminish any of these receivers. It's just, again, best player available versus team need.
Okay, so yeah, I had Kinlaw going at 9. I had Ruggs going at 12. So that just leaves me to say that Jeudy's going to go to the Niners at 13. And I mean, the smile on Kyle Shanahan's face may never leave if John Lynch literally lands Jerry Jeudy at number 13. And it's long been thought that Odell Beckham is the perfect fit for Shanahan's offense. So why not land his clone in Jeudy? You know, after trading DeForest Buckner to land this pick, the Niners will do exactly that and get the draft's best receiver as a steal. Jeudy isn't big, and he isn't blazing fast, but he's a fantastic route runner, as we said.
Why Jeudy over Lamb? I think Lamb is a better fit for Kyle Shanahan.
Yeah, I would have to agree on that one.
I feel like they've been targeting Jeudy all offseason. That's the thing. They've talked with Jeudy more than Lamb. They've said, I feel like someone reported
they had an interview with Lamb just a few days ago with the virtual interview.
They had an interview with Jeudy too.
I think they're more invested in Lamb just because, again, what does Shanahan run? It's based on system, dude. Like, I think they have.
And he's a stellar playmaker in space, which is exactly what Shanahan wants. And despite sharing targets with those other 3 like first-round caliber receivers at Alabama, Jeudy won the Biletnikoff Award as a sophomore and only saw his game improve in his final season in Tuscaloosa. If Judy's on the board, I feel like this is a no-brainer for the 49ers. I'd rather go Jeudy over Lamb.
No, again, these 2 receivers are great, and I think it's just about team fit. Like, in my opinion, Jeudy is the better receiver. But in terms of system fit, Lamb is a lot faster in terms of motion, and after the catch, Lamb is one of the most deadly prospects we've ever seen. And that's what the Niners flourished off of, right? Whether it was Deebo getting these short routes, running him for touchdowns, Kendrick Bourne off slants, right? We've seen it constantly, and I don't see how you would pick Jerry Jeudy, who's more of a possession receiver, where based off his routes getting open, right? Whereas Lamb, right, coming in with different quarterback play with Baker, Kyler, Jalen Hurts, he's been consistently producing, and his ability to get, take a short pass and take it all the way is just mind blowing. Like we've seen, I mean, if you've watched his highlights, they're just incredible. And I agree, Jerry Jeudy is a better I would rank him over Ceedee Lamb, but in terms of system and how they go, I think Lamb is a lot better of a fit.
Here's the thing. Lamb can be a number one, but Deebo Samuel is your number one heading into the season if you're the Niners.
Honestly, I think Deebo would be the number one over Jeudy as well. I think
exactly. That's the point I'm trying to make. But I feel like Lamb and Deebo are
Judy's
so
been a number
similar.
one.
I feel like Lamb and Deebo are kind of similar, but like Jeudy, I feel like you need a possession guy like Jeudy, because who do you have outside Deebo? You have Bourne. That's your red zone threat. You have Trent Taylor coming back.
Slot.
You have Jalen Hurd coming back.
Yep.
I mean, I'd go with Jeudy. I feel like I get what you're saying in terms of like scheme fit, but I mean, he's the best receiver in this class, and I mean, like, that's the guy.
It's not that big of a difference. And again, like, Deebo is a number one, and Judy's never been used to being a complement receiver. And I think in Las Vegas, right, he can easily be the number one. Like, it's not even close. Tyrell has always shined as a number two to, for example, Keenan Allen. He has always been that number two guy to kind of thrive in that kind of system. And if he has Jeudy as his number one, where he can complement a receiver from Alabama who's done crazy things as a route runner, I think that's great for both receivers. And I think for the Niners, when they look at it, if you can have these run pass options or these two crossing routes with Lamb and Deebo on opposite sides, I think that is absolutely deadly, because you've got speed in terms of their ability to take a short pass and take it to the distance. And I'm not saying Jeudy would be a bad pick here, but I think Lamb's scheme fit is far, far better.
But I feel like what we can agree on is either way it goes, you're still getting a great receiver. So whether you want Jeudy, you want Lamb, it's like, it's still a great pick.
I mean,
and please don't rule out Kinlaw. Don't rule it out though.
No. I feel like he's the best. I feel like he may be the best option outside a receiver. I just don't see why you would take him over Ruggs in this case.
Yeah, I just think there's no wrong choice if both those receivers are on the board. They're two elite talents. Personally, I would lean Lamb in mine because Jeudy is gone.
Yeah.
And I just don't think they're going to reach for Ruggs, who I have as a third receiver in the class. And I think it's a little bit of distance between the top two and him.
Exactly. I think he's a bona fide 3.
Yeah. And then so let's move on to the Buccaneers. Anish, you just had Kinlaw go, but I'm going to have Kinlaw go to the Buccaneers here. Like I've said before, this was the toughest pick for me to make, because it seems like the Buccaneers really need offensive line, but the way my draft fell, there was none for them to take. So in a no-trade mock, I just didn't know who they would go with. So I gave him Kinlaw, but this was easily the pick I'm least confident about, I think, in the entire first round, just because there wasn't a player there that I think they would want. So they'd either be looking to trade up or trade down. But since we're not allowing trades, I have him going Kinlaw, but I really wasn't confident about this pick.
Yeah, the Buccaneers added the GOAT and Tom Brady, but now they have to protect him. So, I mean, I still have Andrew Thomas available, and I feel like that's the best case scenario. Thomas, he's a 3-year starter at Georgia. He's a rock-solid left tackle. And I feel like he has a no-nonsense approach to the position. He's not flashy athletic, and he's not mammoth strong, but he's poised and patient as a pass protector. And I feel like he's strong enough in the running game to cause problems for defenses. And with Brady and Bruce Arians wanting to win from the pocket, I feel like improving the edge of the offensive line is a massive need. And with one pick, the Bucs can solve their most important position.
Yeah, so speaking of massive, I actually had Mekhi Becton slip here because so in my first scenario, again, where I had Simmons going 4th to the Giants, right? So that means they didn't take Becton, and I had Becton slip all the way to 14, which is a perfect fit for the Buccaneers. Obviously, need to address the offensive line. They get a bona fide left tackle in Mekhi Becton, who, again, I still have my questions, but I think he has a great upside. And blocking for Tom Brady, who's obviously he's going to need a lot of protection. And I think he'll be a great run blocker for whichever running back starts for them 2020 week 1. Again, I still think it should be Devontae Freeman, but we'll see. So I have Becton slipping all the way there. And in my other scenario, where Simmons went to the Lions, I had Andrew Thomas slipping to them, right? So I think they're going to go tackle here, no matter what. It just depends on who. But again, if there are none available, like in your mock draft, Jack, there's a lot of questions there. I really wouldn't know what direction they would head. So I think tackle is pretty much the only way to go here.
Yeah, I seriously stared at the Buccaneers blank pick selection for a good 10 minutes because I just really had no idea what they would do in that situation. I think once they sensed that a lot of the tackles would be off the board, they would either trade up or trade down because I don't think they really want to go anywhere other than offensive line in this first round. And they can trade back down and get Austin Jackson or Josh Jones, who I think we'll both talk about in the next episode. I wouldn't see them taking anywhere other than offensive line at 14. And that's just the way that my thing shook out. So, I mean, there's not much I could do about it, but I had them taking Kinlaw. I think that would be a pretty good fit for them, but it's just not what I would do if I were them. I would trade down, but that's obviously not allowed in the no trade mock. Now, moving on to the Denver Broncos, I have them selecting Henry Ruggs out of Alabama. I think he's just the best receiver on the board after how my draft fell, and I think he's a perfect fit alongside Courtland Sutton in a Denver offense that could be potent next year.
Yeah, so I still have Ceedee Lamb on the board, so I'm going to say the Broncos take him. And I mean, John Elway has finally found a young quarterback in Drew Lock. He's added key weapons around him in Courtland Sutton, Noah Fant, and Melvin Gordon. But the job isn't done yet. And at number 15, the Broncos can give Lock a go-to target with an excellent catch radius and big playability. Lamb was literally unstoppable in the Big 12, and he often broke the backs of the defenders trying to cover or tackle him. He's not going to run past NFL cornerbacks with speed, but I feel like his physical route running and precise routes will translate to the league. So will his toughness pre and post catch. With Sutton, Fant, and others helping to keep defenses honest, I feel like Lamb could lead all rookies in catches in Denver's scheme.
Yeah, so in my both scenarios, I had Ruggs going 15. And Denver fans got to be excited. Like, this dude has electrifying speed opposite Courtland Sutton, who is, I believe, can easily be a number one receiver. And I think Courtland Sutton's kind of your possession guy who can even get those one-on-one balls. I think Henry Ruggs is just electrifying, just, deep threat. He can also take a slant to the house. He's just one of those fast guys. And just a quick note for before we kind of move on and kind of talk about other picks, I just want to let you guys know that per Albert Breer, the Falcons, Broncos, and Buccaneers are all interested in moving up in the draft. So we should kind of take note of that. Just like for the future picks, I think these guys can potentially go for what they want. Like, again, we were talking about Bucs trading up for the Jags. The Falcons we can talk about later on, but like the Broncos, I think if Lamb isn't available, I think they might trade up for him. But personally, I think Henry Ruggs is honestly one of the best fits out of the three in their system. I think Lamb and Ruggs are good fits there. But I think Ruggs' electrifying speed at 15, you can't go wrong here. And I think him opposite Sutton is a pretty deadly combo. And I think Drew Lock's going to have a lot of fun because Deshaun Hamilton is not a number two. He showed a lot of signs of regression with those drop passes and kind of key moments. So I think Henry Ruggs is a great fit here.
Yeah, and I feel like either way it goes, you still want to get another weapon for Drew Lock because this can finally be the guy. This can finally be your franchise quarterback.
Yeah, it seems almost dead set. They'll be drafting one of the three receivers. And Anish, what you were talking about is a couple of those guys. Like, I don't see who the Falcons would be moving up for, or even the Broncos really, unless they're really not content with Henry Ruggs at 15. If they wanted Jeudy or Lamb, I can see them moving up.
Yeah.
But the Falcons,
I wouldn't if I were them.
I'm not sure. Yeah, the Falcons and Broncos, I'm not really sure if they should move up or really why they would. But the Buccaneers, I can definitely see it because I think it would have happened in my draft.
Most definitely.
But yeah, speaking about the Falcons, this was another hard pick for me to make because I think they do have a lot of holes to fill. But I had them going Kayvon Chason, edge rusher from LSU. I think he's easily the second best edge rusher in this class. And the Falcons have really been lacking that since Vic Beasley's 15.5, I think it was, sack season.
Yep.
And now that they have Dante Fowler, I think Chason and Dante Fowler would be a perfect edge pairing for years to come. So I think that would be the move they would go for. I thought about corner, but for them, I just think edge is probably a little bit more of a necessity at the moment.
I went with a corner here. As Desmond Trufant exits, Florida's shutdown cornerback C.J. Henderson enters. He is a feisty, fast, physical cover man. He has the tools to run with anyone in the NFL, and I feel like he's been battle-tested in the SEC over the last 3 seasons. No, he's not an elite tackler, but you're drafting him to cover receivers down the field, and he's very good at that. The Falcons, after adding Dante Fowler in free agency, are clear to address the secondary at number 16, and I feel like Henderson's an excellent value and fit.
Yeah, I also had them taking CJ Henderson. Again, like I said, the report about scouts saying that Henderson is a clear number 2 here. And I disagree. I don't think defensive line is the main team need. Like, they just got down Dante Fowler, who's one of the premier edge rushers we have in our game. I don't really see the need to assess the other side of the defensive line. I think if you can get a number 1 corner here in CJ Henderson to replace Desmond Trufant, I think that is a huge void filled there. And keep in mind, again, for the draft, I'm all about 2 things, right? Best player or team need. I think he's both here. I think he's the best player available at 16, and you've addressed a vital team need. I think they're fine here at Henderson.
Yeah, I just think that implementing 2 edge spots in one offseason would really transform a Falcons defense that really hasn't had a huge edge presence, and now they're going to get 2. I just think that edge in this year's year's NFL is better and more important than corners. And like we talked about before with Okudah, I think corners take longer to develop, especially if it's one like CJ Henderson, who has a lot of problems but has the upside to become a great corner.
But see, the secondary for Atlanta has just never been good, and it's still so many questions. And you have Keanu Neal is the only guy that I see that's Robert Alford. I don't know if he's still there, but those are the 2 guys that I see, and they don't play corner. I believe they're both safeties. So the corner, like, can you really name a comparable, decent starter at cornerback for Atlanta? I can't.
Especially with Trufant gone.
Yeah,
Robert Alford. But I guess
he plays nickel, but
on the slide, you still need an outside corner.
Yeah, and that's what
I just think that they'll go either way. I don't think there's really a wrong choice, Chason or one of the corners. I personally have Trevon Diggs as the second corner for at least my big board, and not CJ Henderson. So I can see them going corner. I think they're going to go Chason, just from what I think they've needed for a couple years now, which is dominant edge rushers. And I think that Chason's just a better player than Trevon Diggs. So I had them going him at Big 16.
Quick note on Trevon Diggs. That's a very, very interesting.
Yeah.
You have him ranked number 2 because
over Gladney.
Yeah. Over Gladney and Henderson.
So JPA
over Jalen Johnson too.
Yep.
I don't know.
So JPA actually reported that a lot of NFL scouts believe that Trevon is a day 2 pick, which is to me that's very concerning. They have him as a day 2 pick, and honestly, in my mock draft, I didn't have him going in round 1 either. I think I had him just slipping out. I don't even think he cracks my top 3 or top 4 in terms of corners. I think, or defensive backs in general. He's a great. Don't get me wrong. He's a great corner. Obviously, played for Alabama, and he kind of has that bloodline of NFL talent with Stephon Diggs. But I don't know how you would take Diggs over CJ Henderson, just because Henderson's been good for longer, and also his draft stock's gone up, whereas Diggs has gone down.
I think
if I had to rank the corners, I think I'd go Okudah, Henderson, of course, and then Gladney.
Yeah.
And then
I'd go Gladney in 3.
And then I'd go Jalen Johnson, AJ Terrell, and then I'd probably go Trevon Diggs, if we're being completely honest.
I'd have the same list. I would put Fulton, though, right after Gladney.
Yeah, I had Fulton right after Trevon Diggs, so either way.
The problem with that is I just think that Diggs is well-rounded as a corner. You think Henderson really struggles with tackling, but also he's just a playmaker, and we've seen what Alabama DBs can do. And I just think that people need to put more trust in Diggs, just because of his playmaking ability, being able to get after the ball. But also, I just think he's a better tackler than Henderson, and I think he's being overlooked, which would make him just kind of a silent killer. And I really believe he's the second corner in this draft, and I hope he proves me right. So for that reason, I can't put him over Chason for the Falcons, which is why I had to give them him at pick 16.
So you're saying Chason would be the best player available, and that's why they go there. Chason at 16.
But they don't need to go best player available. They need to go team needs.
So again, that's like the whole thing with the draft, right? Like best player available, team need. In my opinion, I think Henderson fills both. But I think where you and Srikar, you and Jack are kind of going, Srikar, you believe Henderson fills only the team need, whereas Jack believes.
No,
Jason
I feel like it can be both.
Available.
I feel like it can be both as well. I just didn't want to explicitly say best player available.
I just think of all the players, I think there's only one corner in the top 20, and that's Okudah. So I didn't think that the Falcons should reach
top 20.
I don't.
Wow.
So I had the Falcons going Chason, who in most drafts, to be completely honest, would be a top 15 player in the draft. This is just a very stacked draft class. And so I had them going him at 16, which I think is a steal because I think he has all the traits you want in an edge rusher, and being able to bring him and pair him with Dante Fowler and Grady Jarrett on that line is just kind of a menacing D-line right there, and that's what they've needed for a couple of years now.
But again, secondary, that's a huge, huge question mark, and I think they get a lot more balance if they take Henderson here. Again, I forgot to mention Grady Jarrett with Dante Fowler, I think is good enough. I think that can be very menacing. And I mean, if you want to add Chason, sure, but he also needs time to develop. And I think Henderson can be a good kind of plug and play, whereas he's learning under Dan Quinn, right? Who's developed corners such as Trufant, such as Richard Sherman, Byron Maxwell, Brandon Browner, the list goes on. So, I mean, why can't he do it with Henderson? Obviously, Browner had problems as a tackler. He became a great tackler. Same with Maxwell, even Richard Sherman. So I don't see how Henderson can't learn in this system.
I'm not saying he can't learn. I just think that Chason's simply a better player than he is, and I don't like it as much when teams draft off team need. I think that that's how good teams succeed, is they draft best player available. And right now, I think he's the best player available, and it's a steal in most drafts to get a player of Chason's caliber at pick 16. So that's really all we have for today. Next episode, we'll be going through picks 17 through 32. In the description on YouTube, we're going to have all of our mock drafts picks 1 through 16, so you can go back and take a look at them. And we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.